So now, hello everyone, this is AMIT MISHRA and welcome to all training in our in-house training session. So this is the circumference of the HRIPS public school. So let's now learn today according to the very interesting topic. So here the topic is right now on the board. So everyone focus on the board. So learn as the gamification of the learning. So gamification of the learning, as you know that some students have to got the embarrassed feel after the long time of the academic session. So it's the most efficiency of the every teacher have to know about to teach their students with the help of the game. So today I am now persuading the all trainee to how can you train the students with the help of the game. So let's now on the board the next slide, as you know on the today as the abstract that the today's the schools face the measure the problems around the student as so motivation and the engagement as the gamification or the incorporation of the game elements into the non-game. So you know that the setting the provides and opportunities as you to help the school solve and the difficulties as the problems. However, the gamification is to be of the use to schools. We must better understand what gamification is. So how it is the function and the why it is the might be the useful. So this is the article that addresses and all the questions exploring both the potential, the benefits and the pitfalls on the gamification. So it means to say the all teachers have to implement the ideas of the games to teach the students without any embarrassed feel without the boring of the students, to prevents from the hard and tough work as the homework work as the etc. of the there some books, the extra books such like the activities of the implementation by the teachers, class teachers as well as the principals. These are all to remove their all pressure on their minds. So use this the topic as the gamification. So now here the next slide for the learning.
Let's be honest, kids despise learning, but they enjoy playing games and would not mind sacrificing their sleep just to earn points, defeat the boss, or unlocking the new levels. How great it would be if we can make learning fun just like games. Anyway, we already did it. Gamification refers to involving game elements like points, badges and achievements into a non-gaming activity to motivate users' participation. Each time you receive a reward, your brain releases dopamine that makes you feel good, chase after more reward and motivates you to do more. This is how gamification in education works. It makes the learning fun, more engaging and motivates the students to spend more time. Different game mechanics and game dynamics are used to gamify learning. Here's how you can use them. Points and XPs. You use points and XPs to develop a reward-based grading system where students earn points for every effort made. This cumulative way of marking proves to be more efficient as earning points in each evaluation feels more rewarding. Levels and challenges. Use levels to define the learner's journey. Start with the basics of the subjects with simple tasks and gradually increase the level of difficulty as the student progresses in the module. Leaderboards. Everyone wants to see their name on the top, and that's the reason all addictive game has a leaderboard. Utilize leaderboard in gamifying learning and students will spend more time just to see them.
So let's learn the next slide. As you know the why they use the active learning. So also we know that the students need to active learning. How can the active learning to proceed in their classroom, their fields, their academic schools and colleges also. So here the first as the creates a positive, competitive and the environment. So now the chance for the team play as the encourage the individual to the strive as they are the best and the use of the teamwork to achieve more. If we have to work as the proceed with the teamwork for the students with the help of the game system as the sports system as the gamification system, the students learn more better than the class work and also according to the next point as the stimulates the participant as the focus the real time the discussion and the analysis of the learning the topics through the interactive games and the strengths. So you know that the participants as the attentive and attentiveness to subject the matters. And the point number 3, as the increase the participation, as the participant will be, the more the willing as the provides the honest the feedback and the overcome to the cynicism as the factor. So it's the most beneficiary for the gamification is the number point 4, as the enhance the meaning of the boost the retention, as the provides the better, as the focus on the awareness the which the leads to the greater the memories as the recall in the participants. And here the number point 5 is as the engaging the experience games the boost in the energy of the room and to catch the participants at the attention and to provide the opportunities for the interaction. So trainees, we have to learn according to all these points. We have to improve our education system, we have to improve our the learning system, we have to improve our the teaching system with the all 5 points. So why use the active learning? So this all that points have to the implement in their classrooms as well as the field to create a very good classroom, the system of the education. So now we have to go through the next slide to learn the another. So please, in the learning the context as the gamification the occurs when the game like the properties as for example the rules, conditions for the victories as the reward, punishments and etc. are the introduced into a curriculum. So now you have to focus on the board curriculum. The goal of the increasing the students as the motivation or the academic performance. So you need the academic performance of the every students is the must be better than the other previous classes, previous academic session. So you have to implement all these are the types of the gamification. So please next. So the gamification of the learning as the education approach the seeks of the motivate the students by the using the video. So what is the gamification learning and the education? So now here the question, we have to learn the all by this question, what is the gamification and in the learning and education? So according to this question, we have to train our students by the gamification of the learning is and the educational approach that the seeks to be the motivational students by the using video. As you know the previous slide, as the goal is to maximize the enjoyment and the engagement by the capturing the interest of the learners and the inspiring the team the continue the learning. So it must be the better than the system of the academic as we use the gaming system to learn the students, to teach the students is the much better than the academics. So next slide we have gone to. So here the question is the how is the gamification used in education? It's a very important question. Gamification, how can we use a gamification system? So now the teachers can implement the gamification the following the examples. So these are the examples of the gamification as you know that. So we have to learn from this slide as the teachers use. How can use? So use at the first point is the giving the points for the meeting and the academic objectives as the point number 2, the giving the points for the meeting procedure and the the academics the objectives. Point number 3 is the creating the playful the barriers and the point number 4 is the creating the competition within the classroom. यानी अगर हम लोग देखते हैं तो ये सारे जो points हैं हम अगर implement करते हैं in the classroom is the better in increase in the system of the education of the students. So now the next slide please.
Today, I will be providing an introduction to gamification in the mathematics classroom. I'll briefly describe gamification, present some research regarding its effectiveness in the math classroom, provide tips for implementation, games to try with your students, and finally, suggestions of what you can read to learn more. My name is Faith Kelford, and I am a 6th grade math and science teacher at a public middle school in Los Angeles, California. I have experience with grades K through 8, and I enjoy using games with my students, especially in math. If you would like to connect with me on Twitter, my handle is @Mrs. Kelgord, and I would be happy to discuss this topic and many others. When students come to middle school, many of them have math anxiety and negative feelings associated with mathematics. As they enter into higher levels of mathematics classes, students' motivation actually decreases. Research has shown that a safe environment where students feel comfortable taking risks can help mitigate math anxiety. One way we can increase students' motivation, learning experience, and joy is through gamification. What is gamification? Gamification is the use of game elements such as points, leaderboards, and badges in a non-game environment, in this case, the classroom. Games can be insular experiences within a single lesson or last for the duration of the course. Games could be digital, such as video games or apps, or non-digital, such as card or dice games. Digital math games can lead to higher scores on fluency and achievement tests. O'Rourke, Mann, and Hill introduced Dr. Kawashima's brain training for daily fact fluency practice. After 10 weeks, the students using the game grew by 6 times as many points on a fluency test compared to those who had not. The success of gamification in the math classroom, however, is not limited to fact fluency. Errol and Jamet found that students who played Dimension M to supplement their traditional curriculum outperformed their peers who did not have access to the game on a district benchmark exam. There is compelling evidence that mathematical games have the potential to increase students' mathematics achievements. The use of games in the mathematics classroom has also been shown to increase student motivation. Afari, Aldridge, and Fraser, 2012, found that after the use of a Jeopardy-like game, students reported feeling more motivated to learn mathematics, they had higher levels of enjoyment during class time, and they increased their mathematical competency. Students also mentioned they would feel more comfortable seeking the teacher's help when they needed support. Now that we know games can help our students, what are some ways we can make sure they are successful? First, you definitely cannot expect the game to be the sole way students learn new content. In studies where students only play games, they actually learn less than their peers who had more varied learning experiences. In addition, many educators fall into the trap of believing that since our students are digital natives, they should not need help with new technology, especially games. It is important to remember that not all students have the same experience with games and to provide support. It is also important to not overwhelm students with overly complicated games when they're trying to learn new or difficult content. Gamification works best when students have the opportunity to collaborate and interact with each other. They should be able to share ideas and strategies, justify their solutions, and brag about their progress. This can help increase motivation and engagement, as well as help develop their oral language skills. At this point, you're probably eager to get started. The following games are free or low-cost games that you could try in your classroom tomorrow. Some of them are digital games, and some are non-digital games. Even if you do have reliable technology access, it's always great to have a few non-digital games in your back pocket for those days when the Wi-Fi goes out or the Chromebook cart wasn't plugged in over the weekend. Quizzes is a free game where students compete to answer questions and earn points to rise up the leaderboard. This game can be used as a formative or summative assessment. Quizzes has a large library of pre-made games you can use or you can create your own. My students love the memes that pop up if you answer the question right or wrong. Prodigy is a free role-playing game where students answer mathematical questions to battle monsters with their friends. As a teacher, you can assign certain mathematical topics, and the game can also adapt to the difficulty to meet the difficulty needs of that particular student. Students in my class love to battle each other and see who's on top of the class leaderboard. Fogstone Isle is a world-building game that many students compare to Minecraft. Students develop conceptual understanding of fractions and real-world situations as they build structures to keep their gruffins safe from monsters. This game is best for grades 3 through 6, or any student that needs extra practice with fractions. The next two games are paid apps, but they're still low cost. The first is Dragonbox Games, which is a series of games that cover topics from numbers through algebra. The second is Was It Trouble, where you try to unlock a creature from a lock by using the knowledge of arithmetic to crack the code. These games are great to recommend to parents to download and play at home. Those of you without regular technology access may be wondering how you can use games in the classroom. For most of my teaching career, I did not have access to technology regularly in my classroom. Luckily, there are many excellent math games that require very little in terms of materials or financial investment to get started. In the game How Close to 100, students roll the dice to get two factors to multiply to create the area of a rectangle. Students try to cover the entire grid and see who can cover the most space. I have also adapted this game to practice fractions, decimals, and percentages. The game board can be printed from the UCubed website for free, and if you use a dry erase pocket, it can be used again and again. Another non-digital staple of my class was Multiplication War. In this game, you and your opponent draw two cards and multiply them. Whoever has the largest product wins the round and keeps the card. You could also play Addition War as a variation. A quick Google search can give you detailed rules for this card game and many other math card games. There are also mini dice games available online, and many of them are similar to the card games. Dice also provide a great opportunity to practice probability. My students also enjoy playing Battleship to practice the 4-quadrant coordinate plane. You draw your ships on the grid, and then your opponent calls out the coordinates to guess where your ship is to try to sink it. This is just the tip of the iceberg of games in the math classroom. If you want to learn more, I recommend these books. Math Recess helped me learn how to bring joy and play to the math classroom. The Game Believes in You helped me think of new and innovative ways to use video games. About Teaching Mathematics is a K-8 staple with many non-digital games to help students build conceptual understanding.
Okay, so what is the key purpose of the gamification? What is the key purpose? So students, trainees also, the purpose of the gamification is to combine the work with fun. So let's focus on the first line is here, combine the work as with the fun. We have to teach the students with the fun. In the system of the gamification, in the class 1 to 5, also we have to teach any poems with the activities as suppose that a poem, a single poem, to show you the expression, the body expression. So as you with the fun, any non-game, the context as can be made more and appealing by applying the gamification to it. So in the simple, as the words, the gamification means the integration of the existing as the environment with the game machine as the according to the databases at August 2018. So now the next slide. So now here the question is why the gamification is important in education. So in this slide we have to learn why is the gamification. So gamification is important in education. Why then in education gamification is very very important. So why? So now here according to gamification is the educational aims to make the learning the more engaging and the appealing to the public audience and the goes beyond the traditional the learning. So as the methods as the traditional the learning as tends to be the boring, if the class is boring to use and the important in education. So the last line is here this show about the many organization have to borrow as the main tools and the concepts from the games to motivate the people. That's all. Next slide please. So as abstract according to the gamification, so it must be the meaningful that today's the school also the measure the problems around those the motivation and the engagement and the gamification or the incorporation of the game the element into the non-game setting the provides and the opportunities as a help the school the solve these the difficult problems. Is that clear? So please now next slide. So now here the motto by the advertisement of the gamification. So according to 1.2 million students have to got the benefit for this system and 28 over the 5 million of the play the average of the 55 hours a week of the game. Is that clear? So the gamification as the advertisement as in education system as the just now the gamification as has with the tremendous as the potential in the education space. Okay, now that's all. So contemporary the gamification. What is the contemporary of the gamification? Why is the contemporary as the gamification in the education system? So now here the according to the you take the draft the August 2013 the 2020 article on the independent as the earning.com as the gamification is the process of the using the gaming the methods and the mechanics in the non-gaming the environments. So the motivate as the customers and the employees as the, according to the Go German in this the textbook. So a very very interesting the person in this world as the Gab Jackman as his the textbooks as the gamification by the design as the gamification is the process of the game thinking and the game mechanics to the engage the user and the solve the problems. So now these are the system of the according to their the latest big personality of the person. So now the next slide. So according to here the points are 3 points also. So in this slide we have to mention here the increasing the participation and the employees the satisfaction the survey. Point number 2 as the motivating the user of the complete the mandatory and the optional training. Point number 3 the inspiring the workers as the join the corporate the wellness as the program. And point number 4 as the encouraging the positive and adaptation of the change the management of projects. These are the gamification according to under this system. So there is the excitement about the applying this the heightened as the engagement and the engagement as among the employees, the customers, and the patient and the management student in the education, the reluctant and the compulsory as the student in the particular. So any tool we have to the catalyze as the curiosity from the inert as the learner will increase the potential skill and the concept of the acquisition and the under of the 2013. So all the trainees have to attend here, please. These are all the slides in the previous.
Let's look at the definition of the term gamification. Quite simply, gamification uses the elements of games to motivate and engage the learner. In order to better understand this concept, let's look at the elements that comprise most basic board games. First, you have a board with marked spaces on which you play. This is the game space. This is the context in which the player plays the game. Usually a game has cards or some other elements that incrementally reveal information to the player. An element of chance exists in most games, created by a spinner or dice. In games, you have pieces, which are basically stand-ins for the player. And finally, you have spaces on the board that reward the player for accomplishments. Gamification is the breaking up of a game into its fundamental elements. Each element of the board game can be abstracted and used to engage learners. The pieces can be considered an avatar, a representation of the player. The dice represent the element of chance. The unpredictability of the game can add mystery. The player can receive points within the game, and the in-game rewards can be thought of as digital badges. While the game board itself is the context or story encompassing all other activities. And of course, in many games, you also have competition and even cooperation among players. From an instructional context, gamification is using game-based mechanics, aesthetics, and game thinking to engage people, motivate action, promote learning, and solve problems in a non-game context. Gamification may seem like a strange or scary word, but the concepts behind it are gaining momentum. The term gamification has not been around very long. The term appears to have been coined in 2002 by Nick Pelling on a web page, but the term did not gain widespread recognition until about late 2010, and now the term and concept are picking up momentum. According to figures reported on PR Web, in 2013, the gamification industry was a $421 million industry. And by 2018, it's expected to go to a $5.5 billion industry. That's a growth rate of 67%. And while gamification is gaining momentum, it is still often confused with learning games and simulations. Technically, gamification is not the same thing as a learning game or simulation. A learning game or serious game is typically a self-contained unit that has all the elements needed to engage in play for a set period of time. It has a clear beginning, middle, and end. Game-based learning is using an actual game to teach or reinforce a skill. A simulation, on the other hand, is a realistic, controlled risk environment where learners can practice specific behaviors and experience the impacts of their decisions. Another way to think of gamification is as a continuum. On one end is simply adding points to a learning event, and on the other is a fully immersive 3D learning equivalent of Halo. Most gamification efforts are somewhere clearly in the middle. Additionally, gamification can be further refined into two types: structural gamification and content gamification. Structural gamification is the application of game elements to propel a learner through content with no alterations or changes to that content, only the structure around the content. A common implementation of this type of gamification is to take the scoring elements of video games, such as points, levels, badges, leaderboards, and achievements, and apply them to an educational context. An example of structural gamification in a learning context is when a student receives content to be learned through a quiz-type game on a daily basis for a 2-week period via email or through a mobile app. The student receives an email with a quiz question containing content to be learned. If they answer correctly, they earn points and progress toward earning a digital badge. If answered incorrectly, the student is immediately presented a short instructional piece designed specifically to address the topic covered in the initial question. Questions are repeated at various intervals until the student demonstrates mastery of the topic. The entire process takes 30 to 90 seconds each day and is done either at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day based on the choice of the student. As the student is progressing through the content, the number of questions they answer correctly are indicated on a leaderboard for the entire class to view. This enables the learners to assess their progress relative to others. Content gamification is the application of game elements, game mechanics, and game thinking to alter content to make the content more game-like. Common implementation of this type of gamification would be to add the elements of story, challenge, curiosity, mystery, and characters to content to engage the learner. For example, adding story elements to a series of math problems to place the student in a fantasy context, or to start a classroom dialogue with a challenge instead of a list of objectives. These are both simple methods of content gamification. An example of content gamification in a learning context is when the learner takes on a role and participates within the context of a story. In teaching the topic of accounting, a learner could begin the instruction with a challenge. Complete this audit in 1 hour or your client goes to jail. The learner could then be dropped into the middle of an audit and asked to produce a requested list of documents for the IRS using basic accounting procedures. Within the context of this gamified learning event, the learner must complete the correct document request forms, retrieve file information, and take that information to the auditor's office to avoid arrest. The learner is scored on accuracy of documents, speed of responding to requests, and whether or not the right documents were provided to the mock auditor. This is an example of content gamification. So in conclusion, knowing the 2 types of gamification will help you think how you want to apply gamification to your own content that you design. Remember, gamification is simply applying game elements, game thinking, and game mechanics when designing instruction. You can apply these ideas to help move your learner through instruction, or you can apply them to actually alter the content of your instruction. So now that you've had this brief definition of gamification, you can now use your knowledge to create your own engaging, game-like learning events.
So now every trainee have to learn some as a points from these videos. So please, we have to learn another topics, as you know that. So insight as the studies and the gamification of the education in the gaining as the further the support along as the research and the educators who recognize that the games stimulate the productivity and the creative inquiry as the learners, and you know the horizon the report as the 2013. So the primary value as the provided by the gamification is the heightened as the voluntary, as the enjoyable, and the engagement as this the engagement is only the attack as the customers, and but can the result in the both the habit and the culture, as you know the which the encourage as the repeat the and the return the customers the ones down as the into the fun of the game. So according to this video you have to learn the all these topics as in from slides, as the amount of the time they spend around in the band of the increase, as does the opportunities and the for the purchase and the engagement, the brand and the loyalty. So next slide please. So here the question is, what is the gamification in the learning PPT? How can you make the PPT according to the in the term of the gamification to persuade the topic of the students? So here the all trainees have to focus on the board. So gamification of the learning, the adding the game elements. So please, traditional the learning, the structural as the points, bases as the leaderboard, content, characters, challenge, and the feedback. Gamification is the using as the game based and the mechanics as the aesthetics and the game the thinking to the engage as the people, and now the motivate as the action the promote the learning and the solve. So all trainees have to learn these the points as the learning PPT by the gamification. So please next slide. So now we know that the definition of gamification. So the everyone have to ask after the training, what is the gamification? How can you the persuade? How can you the define the gamification? So the training is as the process of the adding the games of the game like the elements. So game like elements we have to the added the teaching process. As you know, the something as the such as the task, so as the encourage of the participation. So next slide please.
The gamification of learning is an educational approach to motivate students to learn by using video game design and game elements in learning environments. The goal is to maximize enjoyment and engagement through capturing the interest of learners and inspiring them to continue learning. Gamification, broadly defined, is the process of defining the elements which comprise games that make those games fun and motivate players to continue playing, and using those same elements in a non-game context to influence behavior. In educational contexts, examples of desired student behavior which gamification can potentially influence include attending class, focusing on meaningful learning tasks, and taking initiative. Distinguishable from game-based learning, gamification of learning does not involve students in designing and creating their own games, or in playing commercially produced video games. Within game-based learning initiatives, students might use Gamstar Mechanic or GameMaker to create their own video game, or play Minecraft, for example, where they explore and create 3D worlds. In these examples, along with games such as Surge for PlayStation and Angry Birds, the learning agenda is encompassed within the game itself. Some authors contrast gamification of learning with game-based learning, claiming that gamification occurs only when learning happens in a non-game context, such as a school classroom, and when a series of game elements is arranged into a system or game layer which operates in coordination with the learning in that regular classroom. Others include games that are created to induce learning. Gamification initiatives in learning contexts acknowledge that large numbers of school-aged children play video games, which shapes their identity as people and as learners. While the world of gaming used to be skewed heavily toward male players, recent statistics show that slightly more than half of video game players are male. In the United States, 59% male, 41% female, and 52% male, 48% female in Canada. Within games and other digital media, students experience opportunities for autonomy, competence and relatedness, and these affordances are what they have come to expect from such environments. Providing these same opportunities in the classroom environment is a way to acknowledge students' reality, and to acknowledge that this reality affects who they are as learners. Incorporating elements from games into classroom scenarios is a way to provide students with opportunities to act autonomously, to display competence, and to learn in relationship to others. Game elements are a familiar language that children speak, and an additional channel through which teachers can communicate with their students. Game designer Jane McGonigal characterizes video game players as urgent optimists who are part of a social fabric, engaged in blissful productivity, and on the lookout for epic meaning. If teachers can successfully organize their classrooms and curriculum activities to incorporate the elements of games which facilitate such confidence, purpose and integrated sense of mission, students may become engrossed in learning and collaborating such that they do not want to stop. The dynamic combination of intrinsic and extrinsic motivators is a powerful force which, if educational contexts can adapt from video games, may increase student motivation and student learning. 3 key ways in which a classroom, course, or unit can be gamified are through changing the language, adapting the grading process, and modifying the structure of the learning environment. With regard to language, instead of referring to academic requirements with the typical associated terms, game-like names may be used instead. For example, making a course presentation might be referred to as embarking on a quest, writing an exam might be defeating monsters, and creating a prototype might be classed as completing a mission. In terms of grading, the grading scheme for a course might be adapted to make use of experience points (XP) as opposed to letter grades. Each student can begin at level 1 with 0 points. As they progress through the course, completing missions and demonstrating learning, they earn XP. A chart can be developed to illustrate how many XP is required to earn a letter grade. For example, earning 1500 XP might translate to a C, while 2000 would earn a B, and 2500, an A. Some teachers use XP, as well as health points, HP, and knowledge points, KP, to motivate students in the classroom, but do not connect these points with the letter grade students get on a report card. Instead, these points are connected with earning virtual rewards such as badges or trophies. The structure of a course or unit may be adapted in various ways to incorporate elements of gamification. These adaptations can affect the role of the student, the role of the teacher, and role of the learning environment. The role of a student in a gamified environment might be to adopt an avatar and a game name with which they navigate through their learning tasks. Students may be organized into teams or guilds, and be invited to embark on learning quests with their fellow guild members. They may be encouraged to help other guild members, as well as those in other guilds, if they have mastered a learning task ahead of others. Students tend to express themselves as one of the following game player types. Player, motivated by extrinsic rewards; socializer, motivated by relatedness; free spirit, motivated by autonomy; achiever, motivated by mastery; and philanthropist, motivated by purpose. The role of the teacher is to design a gamified application, embedding game dynamics and mechanics that appeal to the target group, that is students, and provide the type of rewards that are attractive to the motivation of the majority. Therefore, it is important teachers know their students so they are able to best design a gamified program that not only interests the students, but also one in which matches the specific learning goals that hit on elements of knowledge from the curriculum. The teacher also needs to responsibly track student achievements with a web-based platform, such as Open Badges, the WordPress plugin Gamian, or an online spreadsheet. The teacher may also publish a leaderboard online which illustrates the students who have earned the most XP, or reached the highest level of play. The teacher may define the parameters of the classroom game, giving the ultimate learning goal a name, defining the learning tasks which make up the unit or the course, and specifying the rewards for completing those tasks. The other important role of the teacher is to provide encouragement and guidance for students as they navigate the gamified environment. The role of a gamified learning environment may be structured to provide an overarching narrative which functions as a context for all the learning activities. For example, a narrative might involve an impending zombie attack which can be fended off or a murder mystery which can be solved, ultimately, through the process of learning. Learning is the focus of each gamified system. Sometimes the narrative is related to the content being learned, for example, in the case of a disease outbreak which can be stopped through learning biology. In some cases the narrative is unrelated, as in a case of music students who learn to play pieces as the means to collectively climb up to the top of a mountain, experiencing various challenges and setbacks along the way. Other ways in which gaming elements are part of the role of the learning environment include theme music played at opportune times, a continuous feedback loop which, if not instantaneous, is as quick as possible, a variety of individual and collaborative challenges, and the provision of choices to which learning activities are undertaken, how they will be undertaken, or in which order they will be undertaken.
So is gamification the effective in teaching? So anyone have asked? So gamification is the most effective? Yes, gamification is the effective. How can effective? The effective is that sometimes the trainee have to teach the students. So what happened after the training? Your result is the very poor after the session. So what implement you have to the in the classroom, as the gamification has been the so in the tremendously. The word is tremendously. So as the effective both in the educational setting and the e-learning, as well as the setting and the event for the corporate, the companies, and using it to the train employees. Not only the students, the also employees have to the benefit for this system. So now the works for the following as the reasons as the gameplay into the basic needs, the autonomy as the value and the competence and etc. as according to the data of the 1st April 2020. So next slide please. So here this slide had to the how gamification can be the benefit to the students. So it is the very important topic. It is a very important topic. Why? Because this topic is related to our students. So how gamification can be the benefit of your student. So the point first is the encourage out of the box. So now focus on board and thinking, as well as the design as the gamified as the course is the more than just the rules and the structures. So now the next point is the maximize as attention, the span the game the based on online the courses, and here the keep the students and the motivated and the increase their the attentions, as well as the next point is the encourage of the accomplishment, as you know that the from the next slide please. What are the gamification the features? What is the features of the gamification? So the features of the gamification is the most beneficiary for the in the future, as the gamification is the techniques which the designs used to, as you know that the insert the gameplay as the elements in the non-gaming the settings. So you know that the enhance as the user the engagement as the with the product or the services by the weaving the suitably fund the features as such as the leader boards and the baz as the into and the exiting and the systems, and the designers tap users in intents and the motivations so they are using it more. That's all. So learn now the next slide please. Next slide. So what are the some of the characteristic of the gamification the approach? It takes the various as the attributes of the games, such as the element of the fun, design, play, competition, and transparency, and applies it to real the life the sensories, as the gamification is the being the considered in the various the human the resources of the process, such as the recruitment and the training and developments the motivation and the engage as the users and the solves. So please next slide. So what are the gamification the techniques? It's a very good question, because we have just used the gamification in our educational system. So the gamification, the techniques use the elements, the principles as the gaming to create and the engaging the learning experience. Some of these associated the gains are the higher learner, the motivation to the participate and the complete, and the higher engagement and the levels. So next slide please. As what are the types of gamification? So such the till time to be that you have to as the learn the gamification in the our education system, but how many types of the, so okay, now the last is here the topic of the structure, the gamification, the content, the base of the gamification, new text and the materials are required, no games as the element, the location, the progress, the best, the reward, use of the storytelling and the promotes the skill, the training. So now the advantage of the gamification in the presentation, the infographic as written by the Kendra Davis as the Wednesday as the January 2021 first as the 2017. So is the must benefit for the digital learning. So the games and are the comprise as of the interactive the questions and the answers, so that the learners can collaborate and actively as the participate in the topic as the discuss, and they are the structures of the ordinary the meeting by the allowing. So now for the active the engagement as the which the increase the effective and the learning system. Please next slide. So now the attentiveness in the order to the effective and be the incorporated seamlessly and your the presentation as it is the best to the use the PowerPoint. So the training as the game templates, this will be the make the for a great interactive and the easy to use the presentation. So the turn your the presentation into a competitive as the learning as the experiences while you and your as the system of the audience get to the be have the found. Please next slide. So this slide have to show the advantages of the gamification in your the presentation. So the question is that the gamification the make the PPT for the in the education system. The advantages of your the gamification is now the engage, stimulate the focus, increase here the ROI as the enhance the participation, and the 5 benefits of the 5 benefits people are the highly engaged by the games. And second another the social group are the established and encourage the productivity. Games provide the opportunity to creative and the innovative and now can the lead to the new ideas and it's fun. So next slide please. So here the tips for the gamification. Now I provide some tips or trainees. As you know, the first is make the game relevant. The make the game relevant, and now the present the material so that is the comprehensible as the encourage as the teamwork and use a point the system and have the control over the situation and motivate the players to the best. So these points have to the who's the train, who's the teach their students to use these all tips for the improvement your education system. So please next slide.
Gamification, by definition, is the use of game design and mechanics to enhance non-game context. After all, people currently spend 3 billion hours a week playing video and computer games. From an educational context, incorporating game elements into lesson plans to motivate students and make learning enjoyable is hard to do. But as gaming technology grew more sophisticated, there came the introduction of serious games based on strategy, time management, and role-playing elements. further enhancing the potential offered by gamification. Gamification focuses on extracting the underlying principles of games and asking whether an education experience can be reconfigured to build on those principles. A successful gamification program will use 4 freedoms of play. The freedom to fail, allowing mistakes to be made with little consequence. The freedom to experiment, allowing players to explore and discover new strategies and pieces of information. The freedom to assume different identities, encouraging players to see problems from a different perspective. And the freedom of effort, with games that allow players to go through periods of intense activity and relative inactivity. In 2009, the New York City-based Institute of Play established 2 fully gamified high schools under the principles of gamification. For many classes, the activities are not internet-enabled, but involve role-playing and classroom exercises. Gamification is not a universal panacea. It is vital to ensure that students are not isolated by the technology, nor do they tumble into the pitfall of expecting immediate rewards for their efforts, but instead find value in learning itself. If gamification is to provide value to schools, projects must be carefully designed to address valid challenges for the schools, focusing on specific areas where gamification can provide the maximum value. The programs must be designed to suit the objectives of the classroom, working with an existing curriculum, rather than introducing an entirely new activity, which may be beyond the student's capabilities. The system requires a strong commitment of both time and money, with administrative support beyond the first attempt to take gamification from a trial concept to a platform, and subsequently refining it. The right mechanisms should be chosen for the class, targeting the right students, which often is the most challenging element. In tandem with the creation of gamified projects, meaningful assessments of whether they are achieving their aims must be developed. The combination of an increased focus on student engagement and the possibilities provided by digital learning make gamification a powerful tool for educators. However, it is a tool that must be implemented carefully. Ultimately, gamification should make learning fun rather than sugarcoating what could be seen as a bitter but necessary experience.
So the all trainees have the focus on board. So after the videos, we have to learn something, the points above, why they use the active as the learning. So why the active learning have to use in the classroom? It must be the important for the students, also the teachers. So here the first point is the creates a positive competitive environments. The first of all have to the all teachers, all trainers, all companies, the staffs, also the useful the workers have to the implement the system of the competitive. So the competitive have to the enroll the play the very good quality of the work. So as the team play encourage the individual. So on the focus, the individual to the strive for their the best and use the best and use the teamwork to the achieve the more. So according to first point, as to teachers, as the teamwork have to the work as the benefit as the best quality up to the so the best relativity also the in the work as the creates the positive competitive the environments. So the point number 2 as so stimulates the participant as the focus. So activities also to stimulate. What is the meaning of stimulate? Every the activities have to show the response, that is the stimulate. So according to stimulate the real time to the discussion and the analysis of the learners, that's the topics the through the interactive the games and the strengthness as the participants and the attentiveness to the subject the matters. So subject of matters is that the stimulate after the participant as the focus on their the work policy. As point number 3, the increases as the participation as the participant will be the more willing as the willing and the is the want of the system as the provides the honest the feedback and the overcome his the sinus and the factors. So according to the enhances the meaning of the boost the retention. So the retention of the teamwork as the provides the better and the focus and the awareness. So it must be the awareness of the all teams work and all the teams as the participant to their work system to the greater the memory as the recall in the participant also. So point number 5 is now the in the engaging as the experience. The experience have the most role play important in the work as the teamwork, the boost in the energy of the room, as well as the participant as attention in there the provides the opportunities for the system. So now we have to discuss about the next slide. So please. So in the learning as the context, so occur in the game as the like the properties, as you know that, as for example the rules. The rules is as the conditions for the victory. So the all trainees has the focus on the gamification as the rules have the most important role as the for victory and the reward also, and the punishment and etc. are the introduced into the curriculum with the system to goal of the increasing the students. So the motivation or the re-academic the performance as. So now the gamification of the learning is an educational approach as that the seeks to the motivate and the students by the using the video and the game design and the game elements. So the game elements and game design as the also the role play as for the trainee to the improvement their students for learning in the learning as the environments as then the goal. So please now the next slide is. So here the gamification is learning and the education as the gamification as in and the educational the approach and seeks to the motivate the students by the using the video and the game design also according to the previous slide and game elements and the learning the and environments and the goal as you know that, and the maximize the enjoyment and that is the engagement by the capturing the interest of the learners and the game encourage of the. So please now. So this is the points, the key points as in the use in education system. The teachers can implement the gamification via the following the examples. These are the examples. All. So please focus on the board. The first point, second point, third point, and fourth and fifth. These are all points have the rule as the teachers can implement in their classroom. How can this possible? Possible is that the point first is giving the points for the meeting and the academic objectives. What is the academic objective? The all system of the as the ads as the system as the some appliances as tools, their objective of academics. So giving the points for the meeting, the procedure and non-academic as the objectives. Point number 3, the creating the playful the barriers as the number point 4 is also the creating the competitions within the classrooms as number point 5 is the comparing the and the reflecting and the personalized and the performance. So now next slide. So now this is the this slide is have to show the system of as what is the key points the purpose the gamification as the main purpose of the gamification is to the combine the work as the with the fun. Any the engage non-gam as the context can be the made more the appealing the by the applying the gamification to it in the simple and words. The gamification means the integration of the existing and the environment with the game the mechanics as the data of the 8 August as 2018. So please next slide.
Learning, but they enjoy playing games and would not mind sacrificing their sleep just to earn points to feed the boss or unlocking new levels. How good it would be if we can make learning for just like game. Anyway, what is it? Gamification refers to involving game elements like points, badges, and achievements into a non-gaming activity to motivate users' participation. Each time you receive a reward, your brain releases dopamine that makes you feel good, chase after more reward, and motivates you to do more. This is how gamification in education works. It makes the learning fun, more engaging, and motivates the students to spend more time. Different game mechanics and game dynamics are used to gamify learning. Here's how you can use them. Points and XPs. Use points and XPs to develop a reward-based grading system where students earn points for every effort made. This cumulative way of marking proves to be more efficient as earning points in each evaluation feels more rewarding. Levels and challenges. Use levels to define the learner's journey. Start with the basics of the subjects with simple tasks and gradually increase the level of difficulty as the student progresses in the module. Leaderboards. Everyone wants to see their name on the top, and that's the reason all addictive game has a leaderboard. Utilize leaderboard in gamifying learning, and students will spend more time just to see the
So all training have to learn this gamification of the education. As you know, from there the all slides as the abstracted, as also the videos and also the points and the features and the use of the gamification in the system of the teaching. So please, all trainees have to implement their all system of the gamification in their the teaching futures. Thank you, all the best.